Yokoso! My name is Echizen, and today I'll be reviewing the most recent Shinkai Makoto film, titled Kimi no Nawa. With that in mind, do note that there will be spoilers here. If you haven't seen this film, please support it by buying the Blu-ray release or wait for it to be screened in your city. I know it might take a while, but the wait will definitely be worth it. If I'm not wrong, it's supposed to release in April in America, so heads up. I also apologize for the lack of footage being used in this video. I do have to avoid getting copyright strikes, so please make do. Without further ado, let's jump in. I'll assume that you've forgotten a bit of the movie, and I'll do a small recap in this segment. If the movie is fresh in your mind, please skip to the next segment. I'll make sure to post the timestamps in the description below. The movie makes use of a non-linear timeline, which basically means time doesn't go in a straight line in this movie. By executing cross-cuts and jump cuts, Kimi no Nawa makes use of temporal discontinuity, jumping between different times, which is an important fact to take note of. Kimi no Nawa starts with our hero and heroine, Taki and Mitsuha, respectively. The two find out that they switch bodies at random times, the cause seeming to be sleep. By leaving notes to each other and updating diary entries, they communicate with one another. Taki is a 17-year-old high school student in Tokyo who is somewhat of an architecture buff. Mitsuha, meanwhile, is also 17 years old, attending high school in the small countryside town of Itomori. She also happens to be the daughter of the mayor of the town, but stays with her grandmother and younger sister Yotsuha. Their family runs the local shrine there. The two realize that they are switching bodies and soon become close compatriots, though they often get into misadventures with one another's bodies. For example, Taki fondling Mitsuha's breasts, while Mitsuha visits numerous cafes with Taki. In a previous scene, Mitsuha performs a ritual with her sister, making kuchikami sake, a sake made from the saliva of the shrine maidens after chewing rice. Later on, Taki delivers the bottle of kuchikami sake to the local shrine of the gods in Mitsuha's body. Mitsuha's grandmother brings up the idea of musubi, a word deeply intertwined with the beliefs of the Japanese religion Shinto. Mitsuha eventually sets up a date with Okudera while in Taki's body. Okudera is Taki's senior at his part-time job, who Taki has been crushing on since the start. As he goes on his date, Mitsuha begins preparing for the autumn festival in her town, revealing cut hair and a kimono. The town has been excited for the past few days over a comet that is close to the atmosphere, visible to the naked eye. Mitsuha leaves a note to Taki, telling him to look out for it after his date. Taki visits the art center Tokyo with Okudera, where he finds a framed photograph of Itomori. He stares at it for a while before Okudera notes that he has changed recently, behaving like a whole different person. As the date ends, Okudera reveals she knew that Taki used to like her, but states that the fact no longer holds true. As she leaves, Taki checks his phone, seeing her last line mentioning the comments. He is notably confused, not seeming to understand what she means. He attempts to call her cell phone, but his call does not go through. Mitsuha proceeds with her festival, seeing the comet with her friends. The comet splits into two, with Mitsuha staring in wonder. Her eyes then widen before cutting back to Taki. From that point on, the two do not switch bodies again. Taki becomes obsessed with finding her, and begins drawing the landscape of Itomori from memory. As he finally finishes his picture, he heads off, attempting to find the location of Mitsuha's town. He is accompanied by Okudera and his close friend Tsukasa, although a bit reluctantly. The trio come up with nothing, ending up at a ramen store. As Taki takes the picture out, the shop owners note that it is the town of Itomori. As Taki grows excited about discovering the location, everyone else realizes that Itomori has been destroyed for the past 3 years, with 500 dead. The trio travel to Itomori, only to confirm this fact, and Tsukasa and Okudera are confused. Taki is convinced that everything was real, and attempts to take out his diary entries as proof. However, they have been wiped from his phone. To confirm his suspicions, he travels to a library and checks the records. He discovers that Mitsuha's close friends, Tessie and Sayaka, have passed away, later confirming that Mitsuha is also dead. As the trio head back to the hotel, Okudera tells Tsukasa that she has always liked Taki, especially recently. She then approaches Taki, noticing the braided cord on his wrist. He remembers that someone gave it to him as a gift, though exactly who, he can't remember. He then recalls what Mitsuha's grandmother had told him about braided cords, that they are time itself, weaving, intertwining, and unraveling. He remembers the Kuchikami sake and knows what he has to do. He heads to Itomori by himself, making it to the shrine where the Kuchikami sake was located. He remembers Mitsuha's grandmother saying that it is half of Mitsuha. A part of her is in that sake. He opens the bottle and drinks a cup before attempting to stand up. He trips, but as he falls backward, he sees a painting on the cave ceiling. A bright blue comet. He sees a flashback of Mitsuha's life, how her mother passed away and how her father left the family house and shrine. He then wakes up as Mitsuha on the day of the comet's arrival. Crying in relief while fondling her breasts, he advises grandmother to leave the town. She laughs, knowing that it is not in fact Mitsuha, but Taki who is speaking to her. She reminisces about her experiences dreaming of another's life, though of whom she can't remember. Taki hurries to school, convincing Tessie and Sayaka to help him evacuate the town to safety, saving Mitsuha in the process. Tessie discovers that a meteor hit the town of Itomori 1,200 years ago, creating the lake in the center of town. This is a reference to the painting on the ceiling of the cave. Taki then attempts to convince Mitsuha's father, but fails to do so. While that happens, Mitsuha's father asks, "Who are you?" Mitsuha then wakes up in Taki's body, wondering how he ended up in Itomori. She climbs to the top of the crater and immediately sees the destruction of the whole town. She realizes that the last moment she remembers is when she died. She then recalls that the day before the comet's impact, she headed to Tokyo in search of Taki. She manages to find Taki by accident on a train and approaches him. He, however, does not recognize her. Before she leaves, he calls out, asking for her name. Before they are separated, she gives him her braided cord. Taki cycles to the shrine, convinced that Mitsuha is there. There, they hear each other's voices, separated by time. It is only at twilight, Katawari Doki, that they meet. By the power of plot convenience, or fate as some like to call it, the two meet and have a small exchange. Taki tells Mitsuha that she has a lot to do, and she agrees. Taki suggests writing each other's names on their palms, and then proceeds to write something on Mitsuha's palm. Just as Mitsuha tries to write hers on his palm, the two are separated once more. Taki is convinced that he will not forget her, screaming her name into the distance, but eventually ends up crying, unable to recall her name. Mitsuha rushes back to town, blowing up the town's substation with Tessie. The two rush back to town, staging a hoax attack, convincing the town people to evacuate. However, their efforts are stopped by the town council. Mitsuha runs to convince her father, trying to recall Taki's name all the while. This causes her to trip, taking a bad tumble. She remembers that Taki wrote on her hand and looks at it in desperation. On her hand is written, "Skida," which means, "I like you." She laughs in exasperation, saying, "This won't help me find you." She runs to her father, begging him to evacuate the town. Tessie convinces his father as well, pointing at the comet splitting as proof. The scene cuts back to Taki. It is 5 years in the future. Taki is now applying for jobs as a landscape designer, the Itomori incident far behind him. Nevertheless, he has the unshakable feeling that he has forgotten something and is always searching for it. He meets Okudera, who is now married, with her noting how they once visited Itomori. Taki cannot remember why they did so and why he was so obsessed with it, but he finds the imagery familiar. He passes by Mitsuha once, shooting a glance before walking away. Later on, both Mitsuha and Taki board trains, both of them searching for something. Their trains pass, and they see each other for the first time in 5 years. They run out of the station, searching for each other, before meeting at a staircase near Suga Shrine. The two look each other in the eye, before silently walking past, disappointed. Taki then shouts to Mitsuha, "Haven't we met before?" To which Mitsuha replies, "I thought so too." The two then ask each other, "Kimi no namae wa?" What is your name? Before fading to black. Point 2. Animation. As an animated movie coming from the land of the rising sun, the first topic to be tackled will obviously be the animation. The fluidity of the animation is amazing, nothing less than expected from Shinkai Makoto. This is supplemented by the fluid and stunningly beautiful visuals that have become signature to Shinkai Makoto films. However, Kimi no Na wa stands out head and shoulders above the rest, deploying a mix of cinematography and animation to truly bring this work to life. If you've watched it, you'll understand. Not much to be said here. Part 3. Cinematography and editing. The movie employs smooth pans, track ins and outs to its advantage, bringing a stunning array of technique and skill to the plate. The use of cross-cutting and jump cuts break temporal continuity, suiting the theme of different timelines. The irregularity in time truly brings the theme out in this movie. That was stupid. It is not used haphazardly, but skillfully, slowly revealing what needs to be shown and hiding what needs to be held back. Each piece slowly put together, crafting a beautiful tale. The usage of time-lapse of the city and countryside bring out the Hollywood-esque feel to this movie, further supporting the idea of the flow of time in this movie. Excellent use of technique here. Excellent use of technique. Part 4. Music and voice acting. The soundtrack and large portion of songs were done by Red Wings, a Japanese band, and they have definitely delivered. With their opening song, Yume Toro, they set the mood for the story ahead and get us ready for the adventure. Following that up with songs like Zen Zen Zensei and Nandemo Naya, they set the feel and pace of the song, never letting a moment feel static. The mixing team did an excellent job of getting the everyday sounds of traffic or dining. From glassware to city sounds, every sound was well placed. This helped with the mise-en-scène. It set the mood and setting, wholly immersing viewers into the universe that Shinkai Makoto has created. The voice acting was also done spectacularly, with specific attention to the different dialect accents. They also brought back Kana Hanazawa, a star VA who reprised her role as Yukari Yukino, a central character in Makoto's previous film, Kotonoha no Niwa. This proved as a surprise and a pleasant peek into how her life had changed after the incidents of the previous movie. Overall, the sound aspect of the show is near perfect. Unlike what is commonplace practice in most animated productions, Shinkai Makoto refuses to compromise quality, detailing every single building and person, no matter the time consumed. From the scene at Shinjuku Station to Mitsuha exploring Tokyo, nothing is left untouched, simply proving Shinkai Makoto's eye for detail. There are numerous photos online comparing the original place with the artwork, and the accuracy is astonishing. From then on, Shinkai's character development has a few issues. Due to the nature of the film, while the main characters are fully fleshed out, the supporting cast do not really grow, though this does not provide any problems to the overall feel of the movie. However, his characters each have their own uniqueness and traits, leading to a believable cast and a three-dimensional character who does not fall flat. I especially enjoyed scenes containing Yotsuha, the no-nonsense character who brought me numerous laughs. With Mitsuha and Taki, I enjoyed seeing them changing throughout their exchanges, slowly learning about each other and growing to become close friends, eventually falling in love with each other. The one qualm I have is the lack of detail in their exchange scenes. The scenes are lightly touched on, giving us a slight idea of what the two experienced, but it still leaves a lot more to be desired. Overall, still a great aspect of the movie, but could have slight improvements. Part 6. Symbolism and themes. Now, this is where shit hits the ceiling fan, so buckle in. The first time watching this, a lot of the symbolism and meanings behind what happened in Kimi no Nawa flew over my head. The second time I watched it, mind equals blown. The subtlety of this film is amazing, really requiring a couple of hours of research and study, and while it isn't necessary, it certainly adds to the feel of the film. After all, it wouldn't be a Makoto Shinkai film without symbolism. First, the threads used for braided cords, which are used to reflect the flow of time, or musubi, as Mitsuha's grandma refers to it. The threads twist and intertwine, sometimes unraveling, break, and then connect again. However, Mitsuha's grandma also mentions that musubi can refer to a connection or relationship between two people. The connection of people and thread. Does that sound familiar? In East Asian culture, a red string is to be tied around married couples' ankles, or pinky in the case of Japanese culture, symbolizing their destiny to be lovers, no matter the time, place, or circumstance. Do you see where I'm getting to? Do you see where I'm getting to? At the scene where Taki drinks the Kuchikami sake, a red string is tied to Taki's pinky, with the end tied to Mitsuha's. We also learn halfway through the movie that Taki is in fact 3 years in the future, while Mitsuha has been dead for the past 3 years. The only reason why they meet is due to the red string of fate. We also see the braided cord around Taki's hand, a gift to him from Mitsuha when she visited him 3 years ago, before he even knew who she was. This is a symbol for their predestined love, despite their distance in both time and space. The last symbol, representing threads, is the scene of Mitsuha's birth. Taki sees scenes of Mitsuha's life, seeing her in the hospital room. The crying Mitsuha is connected to her mother via umbilical cord. Throughout, this movie uses strings, lines, and chords to represent the connection, love, and relationship for people. Your head still okay? Then we'll move on to the next point, focusing on the idea of musubi. When Yotsuha wants to drink the tea that Mitsuha is, their grandmother exclaims, "Sore mo musubi," or "That's also musubi." She further explains this statement by saying, whether it be rice, water, or sake, when a person consumes something and it joins their soul, that's musubi. Now this point is very important. Keep it in mind. Musubi is one of the central points of what seems to be plot convenience in terms of the story, but actually makes plenty of sense. The Kuchikami sake that Mitsuha leaves in the cave is drunk by Taki. Grandmother explicitly states, "It is a part of your soul, half of you." Taki had been switching bodies with Mitsuha until she died, essentially living out half her life. And when he drank sake that represented half of Mitsuha's soul, what happens? Next, I'll explain the reason behind Mitsuha cutting her hair. In ancient Japan, among the highly ranked women, they were expected to reflect the nobility of the family they belonged to. Appearance was everything to them. Even in ritual suicide, they had to look pretty. With all that in mind, it's not a stretch to say that their hair was pretty much their life. After all, a woman with short hair in those times was unacceptable. So what happens when Mitsuha cuts her hair? It's a foreshadowing of her about to lose her life. She cuts her hair the day before the comet strikes and dies on the night of the festival. Now you might be saying, that's quite a theory you've got there. And you're probably right. It is just a theory. But I tried. The more logical reason as to why she cut her hair was to represent a break in time. And as we know, time is kind of a big thing in this show. Hair is usually cut in TV shows to signify the break between the old her and the new. She's trying to move on. Maybe she gave up on Taki, seeing that he didn't recognize her in Tokyo. That's for Shinkai Makoto to know, and for us to theorize about. Lastly, I'd like to touch on the idea of kataware doki, another central theme of this movie, brought up by Yukino sensei. Kataware doki is the local slang for kawatare doki, which means twilight or dusk, where the day meets night, or, as Yukino says, when you might meet something inhuman. Twilight in literature always refers to a magical time, where strange things come out, be it witches or monsters. However, in the case of Kimi no Nawa, it is the magical moment and the reason why our hero and heroine meet. When Taki and Mitsuha meet each other at the crater, they are unable to see each other, separated by 3 years. However, the moment it hits twilight, as the sun goes below the horizon, the two meet. They both recognize this moment as kataware doki, the magical moment that time and space do not enter. The word kataware also means fragment, possibly referring to both Taki and Mitsuha, who at this point are pretty much a part of each other. In conclusion, Shinkai Makoto has developed yet another stunning masterpiece, en route to beating Ghibli, and hopefully breaking away from the idea of the next Hayao Miyazaki. Kimi no Nawa is a show with deep, meaningful secrets within it, and a touching love story spanning space and time. Following the idea of long-distance relationships, starting with Hoshi no Koe, physical distance, Byosaku go centimeter, distance between each other's hearts, Koto no Ha no Niwa, age and maturity, and finally, Kimi no Nawa, space and time. I foresee the possibility of another Shinkai Makoto film taking on the idea of love between parallel dimensions. Although Shinkai Makoto has mentioned in previous interviews that the next film he's planning to work on should have a happier ending. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll be back with more similar content, so stick around, drop a sub, or maybe even a like. If you perhaps disagree, leave a comment and tell me why. Ja ne!
東です。